Good afternoon, everybody. It is a privilege to be here. I'm Andrew Ross Sorkin, we're really the pre-show for the show that's going to begin in just a little bit with President Trump. But we have two esteemed governors here. Uniquely, by the way, two governors whose parents were governors. We'll get into that in just a moment. We're going to have a conversation about the state of America, politics, and the state of states that are almost petri dishes, experiments throughout the United States for how to do business. And I think we're learning a lot. And we will learn a lot from both of them throughout the next half hour. Sarah Huckabee Sanders is here. She's the governor of Arkansas, as I mentioned. We were talking about parents before. She's the daughter of Mike Huckabee, who was the governor from 1996 to 2007. You may also know her as the Trump White House press secretary, 2017 to 2019. She's also, I should say, the first woman to serve as governor of Arkansas. Andy Beshear is also here. He's the governor of Kentucky, son of former Kentucky Governor Steve Beshear, 2007 to 2015. And he served as Kentucky's Attorney General from 2016 to 2019. He's also the incoming chair of the DGA. I want to get to states, and we're gonna do the elevator pitch, and we're gonna talk about how you're thinking about investment from outside of the country and everything else. But I want to start just with politics of this moment, because we're going to hear from President Trump in just a little bit, and I think there's a lot of questions about what we're going to hear and what it means to be America first right now. And so I want to read you a quote from a CEO who I spoke with actually Monday night, a foreign CEO, who said the following. I thought it was sort of a very provocative thought. He said, "We always liked and supported the idea of America as a leader. It is different if the framing is, as Trump says, America is the winner, because it means that there must be losers." And I'm curious how both of you, from a political perspective, given this moment that we're living in today and given the foreign investors that I imagine you hope are going to come to your state, think about that idea. Do you want to start?
Happy to jump in. First, I want to say thank you for having us, and excited to share the stage with a fellow governor and fellow Southern governor. So I think we have a unique perspective, having grown up in politics. But I think when it comes to America first, the idea and certainly the perspective that the president comes with is that the rest of the world does win when America is strong. And the rest of the world does better when America has a strong economy, when we're providing good national security. Things like that matter to what happens across the rest of the globe. So America first, America winning, doesn't necessarily mean others are losing, but it shouldn't come as a surprise to anybody that the leader of that country wants them to be successful. I'm the governor of Arkansas. I want Arkansas to win. I want Arkansas to do well, the same way I would imagine Governor Beshear wants Kentucky to do well. We are fighting to bring economic development, to bring investment, to succeed, to be at the top. And it should never be a negative for us to want to be at the top. And I think it's a good thing for the rest of the world when America as a country is strong.
What do you think?
Well, I think, and first of all, thank you to the World Economic Forum. First time Kentucky has ever been invited, and we are excited to be here and to introduce Kentucky on the world stage. I think whether this concept of American first is a good thing or a bad thing depends on how it's implemented. If it's implemented in a way that ensures that the American people have good jobs, quality health care, strong infrastructure, strong public safety, those are good things. But if it questions our alliances, especially our alliances with Europe that are critical to global stability, then it could be a concerning thing for the world, and the ultimate reliability and consistency that we need to do global business and ultimately live in as safe of a planet as we can. And so I think what we'll see as we go is there's always going to be some rhetoric, but exactly how it's implemented, what its implications are, and I think that's both what impact it'll have on the world and what impact it'll have on the American people. Because I think we'll talk about this more, but my belief, and we probably have slightly different ones, on why President Trump is president again, is that last group of movable voters had a gut check. and they believed that President Trump would make it a little easier to pay the bills at the end of the month. So do these policies raise prices, lower prices? I think that's a lot of what to watch as we move forward.
Talking about what to watch, what is your expectation, of the possibility of tariffs and whether they are a negotiating tool or something else?
I think certainly the president, look, I think one of the really important things to look at is this isn't his first time. He's now coming in having been president before, and he knows some of the tools that he has in his toolbox that he was able to use successfully. And we saw a really strong economy under President Donald Trump. We saw relationships across the globe, in many cases, strengthen. Even if they didn't always like the way he said it and the way he went about it, it's hard to argue that his policies weren't effective and didn't make our country stronger. And so I think it's one of those things that he will use as a tool in his toolbox, and something that he can use in leverage in negotiations. At the end of the day, he is the ultimate deal maker. And I think that it is something that he will use as he's going about trying to make sure America comes out as... Are you in the same camp? The only reason I mention this is there's another view, which is that it has to be a toll booth. And that there's a toll booth because when it comes to the budget and the deficit in the United States, that this may be a tool not just to negotiate with other countries, but a tool to collect revenue.
Well, and parts of the administration just said that publicly. I think that when you look at this, these threatened tariffs aren't about trade imbalance. They're about leverage. Why? Because President Trump has been very clear that they're about leverage. But the impacts could go right to the reasons that he was elected, and could have some significant impact on that very quickly. So there's a threat of a 25% tariff on Canada. Well, that'll raise gas prices. There's a threat of a 25% tariff on Mexico. Well, that'll raise food prices. And when you look at the politics of inflation, what are the two things that Americans see? Well, first on every corner is gas prices, and then in the grocery store it is food prices. And so I think as the world watches, it's going to be important to know what the leverage being sought is, and not just following, say, a trade imbalance, but looking at what the objective is and whether or not there are any steps being taken or moving between the two countries to know whether that tariff is likely to come to be.
If I could, one thing I think that is really important in that conversation, particularly when you're looking at gas prices, and one of the things that the president has talked about a lot just in the last couple of days is unleashing American energy. And I think having that balance is what makes a big difference. We saw that in the first Trump administration. We actually were no longer dependent on others for our energy resources. One of the best ways that we can be competitive is not to depend on other people for our energy. One of my dad, and knowing that we probably steal a lot of good material from our parents, having watched them grow up in this business, one of the most important phrases I think my dad said is a country cannot be free if they cannot feed themselves, fuel themselves, and fight for themselves. And that's something that I think Donald Trump fundamentally understands, is that America cannot truly be free. We cannot truly be sovereign if we do not have the ability to fuel our own country, if we don't have our own energy, if we don't have the ability to feed ourselves and we're dependent on someone else, and if we are relying on others to fight our battles for us. This is a president who understands it, and I think it's one of the biggest reasons that he's president today, because people are looking for that.
I have one more related question for you, and then I want to get deep into the issue of states, and both of your states specifically. But given your relationship with President Trump, I think you can speak to this. There's so many business leaders here in this room who are watching us here today and online and elsewhere. This time feels different in that he is now surrounded by business executives, many from Silicon Valley. I'm thinking of Elon Musk, but you could look at that inauguration and some of them had better seats than his own cabinet members. What is going on? What should we think of that influence? What does that mean? And how is it fundamentally different than the first time around, when a lot of those same people did not attend those things? Are they there because they want to be there? Are they there because they feel like they have to be there? Be honest. Tell us what you really think.
We probably have very different answers.
That's why I'm curious.
But certainly, I think there is a much greater optimism that exists this time around than it did in 2016. And being one of the first people to go into the White House right after the president took the oath of office, fast forward 8 years, being in D.C. just a couple days ago for the inauguration, there is a very different feel. There is a sense of excitement that wasn't as widespread as what you're seeing right now. You also have to look at the numbers. Donald Trump won by a historic margin and a big mandate to come into office. A Republican hasn't done that in decades. And so now it's not just that he's coming in with excitement, but he's coming in, frankly, with a lot of political capital. And this is a guy who's not afraid to spend it. You're seeing him move at a pace that is unprecedented. And I think it's in large part because of that level of engagement that you're seeing from a lot of people who weren't at the table the first time around.
I just want to push back on one thing. I don't disagree that there are people who are very excited about it. I think this idea of this wide margin is a different question. Yes, on a per-state basis, but in terms of electoral votes, but in terms of actual the population, much narrower, which I think raises this larger question of just how polarized the U.S. really is.
Yeah, and I know we don't have too many fact checks anymore, but I think basic math, when you look at the election, shows that yes, he won. And yes, there's energy there, but I think a historic margin just isn't in the math. Here's what I see. I see a campaign run by Donald Trump, probably pretty smartly, attacking big tech, attacking in many ways, certainly attacking Facebook or Meta and so many others. And now you see all those executives, sitting in those really good seats, which is really interesting from the company perspective. But it's also really interesting from the candidate and now the president perspective. And I think that it's just one example of how the day-to-day may change significantly and how we'll all have to be watching.
Okay, so here's the question about the day-to-day and the polarization. And that's where I wanted to go with this, because both of you are here selling the United States, but really selling your states. And there's a lot, and I want you to talk about what those selling points are in a moment. But there's a question about consistency, which is if the United States is going to be as polarized as it is at a federal level, if every 2 years or every 4 years things may be flip-flopping back and forth and policies fundamentally change. By the way, you're dealing with it, or you may deal with it soon, around EVs in your state, for example. How easy or hard is it for you to sell your state? And how should foreign investors think about investing in the U.S. given that polarization issue?
Well, first, let me say we'll disagree on federal politics, but I very much respect the governor because I know what she does day to day. Who your governor is, if you are a citizen of your state or you are a business in that state, is really much more important to you, in my belief, than any makeup of the federal government. That is the relationship that you have in location, in growth, in business climate, in workforce, and in so many other needs. It's the direct relationship that as an employer you have or that you should have. And so much of what we do on a day-to-day basis is driven by getting things done, being practical, and a lot of the politics, I believe, as a governor on the day-to-day running of our states disappear. Because good jobs, accessible health care, safe roads and bridges, safe communities, good schools, those are things that we've got to deliver whether we're red or blue. And I believe those are the things that should unify the United States, things that we can work on together, or at least I hope things that we can start working on before we start arguing. So the arguing doesn't tear us apart on getting those basics done. We're both here because foreign direct investment is critical in the United States. In the 1980s, Toyota put their first North American manufacturing facility in Kentucky. It is still the largest manufacturing facility worldwide. That changed everything in Kentucky. It was one of those investments that changes the next 30 years. I was blessed to have one of those when Ford and SK invested $5.8 billion to build 2 incredibly large battery plants. That'll be one of the next big movers. Both required foreign investment. And while we're here, we get to talk to CEOs directly here at Davos that have thousands of jobs in our states. I've talked to CEOs that are from 3 different continents that I can talk to in one place. So for us, being here is good business. There are going to be lots of other reasons to come, but the chance in a short period of time to communicate with, to continue the trust with, to find out the different concerns, to hopefully announce some expansions. That is a real value for governors to be in the room with business.
But Governor, let me just push back on this point, which is, and the reason I mentioned the EVs, you know, one of the things that Trump did very early on, just in his executive orders, to put a freeze on unspent money for charging stations. You've embraced the EV industry in a major way. The Biden administration was a big proponent of EVs. You were a beneficiary of that, and I imagine, you know, that foreign companies, foreign automakers thought, you know, this is what I'm going to be doing, and now the policy is going to change. And so how you think about that as you sell your state, right, knowing that there's this federal overlay that may be shifting. And the question is, do we think that over time it's going to start shifting all the time?
The federal overlay may be shifting, but the private sector and its direction is not. Now, EVs were picking up steam before the Biden administration, and they're going to continue after the Biden administration. The speed may be different. The government dollars coming in may be different. A lot of people have tried to fight the future. Nobody's ever won. We know this is a big part of the future. And as the CEO of Volvo said this week, if you're not brave enough to invest before the inflection point, you get left behind. And so that growth in the EV industry, whether government dollars are coming in or not, was never going to be linear. But the importance of being in it, especially as we see more chargers and the cost will come down, even if the credits aren't there. When it takes off, we know we're going to be a part of it. And we got that $5.8 billion investment before the IRA was ever passed. And so while it is helping the cash flow, certainly, of it, you know, this is the private sector on sustainability, on electrification, has been pushing and driving and will continue to do so.
Governor, what's the elevator pitch?
I think one of the things, and certainly completely agree with the governor, it's so important for us to have the opportunity to come in and talk about what our state has to offer. And we're so directly connected. I think one of the reasons that things like the government subsidizing individual sectors within private industry is dangerous is because exactly what you're seeing with electric vehicles. We shouldn't be putting our thumb on the scale, but instead that's why states and the fundamentals and the things that we have to directly offer, like our workforce, like our ability to supply energy, that's what allows us to be competitive and make a difference. The pitch we're making is that come to Arkansas because there you can grow your business to be anything that you want it to be. That's, I think, what a lot of governors are talking about and selling. We've invested and spent the last 2 years since I became governor focusing heavily on education because I know that that's what's going to make a huge difference in our ability to recruit and retain big companies, is whether or not we can provide the workforce that they need and that they will demand in order to be successful. And we didn't just tinker with the system. Frankly, Arkansas continually ranks at the bottom when it comes to education. We've always been 48th, 49th, all the places that you don't want to be. That's where we found ourselves. And so we didn't just like make a little bit of an adjustment. We put in transformational change so that we're now competing at the top. Arkansas is now #1 when adjusted for cost of living for teacher pay anywhere in the country. So we invested heavily in public education. At the same time, I'm a mom. I have 3 kids. And just within my own home, I know that not all 3 of my kids learn the same. So I know that all the kids within my state aren't going to learn the same. And a parent should have the ability to choose where and how their kid can best be educated. Arkansas also is opening up universal school choice that will start this year. We've invested significantly in literacy programs that will take Arkansas from the bottom to hopefully moving up into the top sector, because those are places that I know that if we invest in the fundamentals, that will be what makes the determination of whether or not a company can thrive in our state. The other thing I love to say is we're home to Fortune #1. A lot of people love to brag about their companies. A place like Arkansas, you can go from being a 5 and dime store to being the biggest Walmart, in case you didn't know. Arkansas is home to Walmart, the biggest company on the face of the planet. And so if that can happen there, then any company can come there, grow, and thrive.
And when we're talking about Kentucky, we're on the biggest, best economic development win streak in our lifetime. We've broken every record for private sector investment, new jobs, wages, exports, tourism, so come see us. But when you look at our trajectory, it's incredible. We're not the same Kentucky we were 5 or 10 years ago, and so we've even launched an initiative called Our New Kentucky Home, one where we leave the stereotypes of the past in the past. We embrace this new exciting economy that we have, and we take everything we love about our home and we invite you to join. It's a place that so many companies that are locating their first U.S. facility choose. It's a place where many companies that have a North American headquarters choose. We're in a great logistics area. You can reach 60% of the U.S. population in a one-day drive. We're #1 in air cargo by the ton between UPS Worldport and Northern Kentucky International Airport. They call it the Cincinnati Airport. It's on our side of the river. But that is DHL's North American headquarters in Kentucky. So we embrace foreign direct investment. We embrace expansions of what we already have. And when you come to Kentucky, it is long-term. We want you to be successful. We want you to grow. And it looks like last year were the highest profits our Kentucky-based businesses have ever seen. And we think that's a good thing. Because if you're really profitable in Kentucky, you're going to expand. You're going to hire more people, and you're going to create a better life for the Kentuckians that have been elected to serve.
That's the sales portion of the panel.
Thank you for that.
No, I want to give you the opportunity to do it.
You can see the competitive spirit that we have, because that's exactly one of the, I think, differences of being a governor, is that you're going out and you have to be the chief salesperson, the chief spokesperson for your state. But one of the things I think that you'll see that is common between the two is a lot of people are fleeing the coast and coming to the heartland. They're looking for a lot of that relationship-driven effort that you're going to see displayed. And one of the things that we're constantly talking about, and why events like this are important, because it allows us to talk directly and one-on-one with companies that we're hoping.
What's going on with labor in both of your states? And the reason I ask, right-to-work states, you're a right-to-work state.
We're a right-to-work state.
You increasingly have a whole bunch of unions that didn't exist before when Toyota first showed up. How does that change the dynamic?
Well, I think you're going to hear some differences here. I'm a pro-union governor. I believe that when businesses and unions will have good dialogue, really good things can happen. I've seen a big transformation over the last several years. We are a right-to-work state much more recently than Arkansas, but certainly the construction of these amazing facilities, Ford and SK's 2 battery plants will be what I believe are the 2 largest in the United States, and they are pretty close to the size of anything in the world. I can't do the kilometers, but one of them is 0.9 miles from one end to another. It's really amazing. I've seen businesses that have never used union labor before use them, especially in some of these instances, and pledge to use them moving forward. But it is about establishing that good working relationship, the open dialogue. And I know it's not easy, but when it works, I believe the workforce, whether it's on the construction side, can be steady. You can bring people from all over the United States, and that there is a real opportunity there. In Kentucky, we've seen our union workforce grow each of the last 2 years. And I think we're going to see it for a
How much pushback do you get on the union piece? I mean, I assume there are companies that come to you and they look at the state and they say, you know what, maybe I got to think about a state that doesn't have a union.
I haven't had a company bring up right to work in locating in Kentucky. Now, it is the law there, and that could be a part of it. But, I think that what you see are some companies. We have automakers, some of which are not unionized in Toyota. They pay good wages, good benefits. And then you have Ford, which pays good wages and good benefits. Ford has embraced for much of their history their labor union. They believe that it helps recruit and train their workers. Toyota has a different approach, but they coexist in the same state.
We're a right-to-work state, extremely proud to be in that position. I think that one of the reasons that Arkansas is the #1 state in the country for economic growth is because of that. One of the #1 state in the country that people are moving into in the last year was Arkansas. You hear a lot about other places, but I think that is one of the big drivers for companies that are coming in, not just coming, but staying, investing, and making long-term commitments to our state. And we're proud of that fact, and we'll continue to lean into being a right-to-work state.
I'm curious about what you think about what some people are describing here in Davos as a vibe shift around the topic of ESG.
That's the word of the last 3 years. Vibes.
Vibes, right? Vibes. No, but a vibe shift, because I would say here in Davos, and you know, I know you said this is your first time
Yes.
here. The topic of ESG and companies that were pursuing efforts in that realm was topic A here every single year, and it feels like that is shifting in the United States, in part because of this election. And I'm curious how you think that's going to impact states and how they react to all of this.
I think you've seen a huge shift away from that, from corporations, not just in the U.S., but everywhere. And I certainly think that is reflected here. At the end of the day, people want to know, can you deliver? Can you deliver on the products that you promise? Are you going to be able to perform at the level that they expect? Not whether or not you're checking some arbitrary boxes. And so I think it is a huge shift that we've seen over the course of the last several years. I think it's one of the reasons Donald Trump is president, because he wasn't afraid to call those things out. He wasn't afraid to go against some of the political correctness and do what he felt was right.
So what's going to happen in your state? For example, I mean, DEI is something, you know, on a federal level, it's just an executive order to get rid of it.
Well, two very different things.
But relates to the...
I've always believed that the private sector is private. And if you believe it helps your business to have a diverse workforce, and you want to put in policies that help attract that diverse workforce, well, again, you're part of the private sector. If you believe it helps you, then the state that you're working with should support you. I believe that sustainability was being driven by the private sector before the Biden administration. It may have had a bump during it, but it's continuing after. Every Kentucky employer that I've met with here has talked to me about sustainability, has said it is still one of their goals. Why? Because their downstream customer demands it, because their ultimate parent company demands it. And for me, if you're a Kentucky business, I'm not ideological about it. I'm trying to meet your needs so that you will stay and grow in Kentucky. If you're a new business and you say, we want to bring 400 jobs to Kentucky, but we need our energy portfolio to look like this. Well, if you think about it almost in terms of business, if you're a state trying to attract it, it's your job to go out and make sure your energy portfolio can meet those demands. Sustainability is going to be a part of the future. It's going to be demanded by most companies that are going to locate in different places. And I want people to know that Kentucky's not going to get caught up in national debates about it. But if it's a need you have as a business, we're going to meet it for you.
If I could just add one thing, I do agree that I think one of the important distinctions is the private sector should be private. That's one of the big problems, is that it wasn't. It was being mandated by the government, and that's where I think that the conflict lies. It is absolutely great if it's driven by the private sector, but the problem comes when it's the government dictating the rules and picking winners and losers.
Right.
And I think that's where there's a discrepancy and probably a difference in...
But we've now seen these organizations that have been created to go after corporations that have quote-unquote woke policies. Right, your policies are your policies if you're the private sector. You know, we can have different opinions on it, but if you believe that it's going to help you to, again, have a diverse workforce, if you want to push different equity measures within your business, that's your business.
But isn't it interesting, can I ask on this point, isn't it interesting, you know, blue states for a very long time, Democrat majority states, pushed businesses in all sorts of ways on all sorts of issues. And the expectation was that Republicans would never push companies on anything because it's supposed to be, you know, believing in a free market, companies should be able to do whatever they want. And all of a sudden, the whole thing has been reversed, right? Do you think that this is in reaction to blue states in some ways going too far? And well, I'm thinking, when I say blue states, pension funds,
sure,
and others who really push companies into doing things that then there's been this pushback on the other end.
We like to put everything in a box. It makes it easier when you talk about it to have red states and blue states. And certainly on the federal level, sometimes in Congress you see that. But I think the running of states is much more complicated than that. And I think there's a lot more nuances between approaches of governors from the same party. It may be Southern governors have some different approaches. And so I just really encourage you to get to know your governor and where they are. I don't describe myself as liberal or conservative. I describe myself as pragmatic, because as a governor, you have to get results. Right? We need more and better jobs for our people. We need more accessible and affordable health care for our people. We need good, safe roads for our businesses and for our people. We both want our communities to be as safe for our people. And so when you look at those day-to-day, and I think non-political results that we have to secure, even if we go about it differently, it just it doesn't break down the same way.
We're going to run out of time, but I just want to, on a practical level, and Governor Sanders, you didn't sell this, which I thought you were going to, because it's actually the reason I would move to Arkansas, which is she has started a pilot program to address phone use in schools and to effectively keep phones out of schools throughout the day. Just tell us what's going on with that, because I know you did a panel yesterday with Jonathan Haidt, but I'm fascinated by that, and I think that may be reason enough to live there for my children.
Well, great. We're glad to hear that you're moving to Arkansas. If you take nothing away, I hope everybody heard that you're relocating. Look, as a parent, and I'm sure you're experiencing this as well with teenage kids, one of the biggest points of contention that we have at our house every single night is over phones and social media and connectivity. One of the things that we have seen that no one is immune to, Republican, Democrat, U.S. or Europe, is the mental health crisis that is plaguing young people in every single community. And one of the things that we know is that is directly contributing to that is the constant overuse and accessibility of smartphones and social media. And I think one of the things that we have to talk about and certainly bring a lot more awareness to is what we're seeing in the trends lines. Anxiety, depression, suicide rates are skyrocketing. Not a good thing. And we know that a lot of that is driven in part by that constant accessibility. And so looking for ways that we can help kids take some of that pressure away, also focus more in the classroom and take away some of those distractions has been very successful in our state. We started a pilot program where we asked schools to voluntarily participate in going phone-free. Within the first 6 weeks, 75% of the school districts in our state voluntarily chose to participate. Within the first couple of months, we were tracking progress because I think proof of concept and data is really important. We saw a 51% decrease in the number of students that had drug use in the schools that went phone-free, 57% drop in verbal and physical altercations and problems in the classroom where they went phone-free. So we're seeing the positive impacts, and we know that the negative impacts are there. And so I think it's a really important topic that we can't ignore and that states can take on a bigger role to address.
We're out of time, folks, and President Trump is going to be speaking very shortly. I know you want to go see that. If he does not succeed in ending TikTok, she might. So we want to thank both governors for a great conversation. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Best first name in the business.
Best first name in the business. Thank you.